September has come and gone, and like the consistent of my birthday being every year this time of year, I also get a lot more busy and unfortunately do not have as much time for watching movies. However, I did watch some movies, so we're going to talk about it. Here is what I've been watching September 2020. But of course, before we get into it, if you're new here, like and subscribe. That's what we do. It's how we show our appreciation. Do me a solid. Just please. The first thing I watched in September was I'm Thinking of Ending Things, the newest Netflix movie directed by Charlie Kaufman. Now, I do have a full review on this, so I would highly recommend going to watch that. But yeah, this was one of my favorite movies of the year. It's Charlie Kaufman, so you get what you get. It's very abstract, even more abstract than most of the movies that I've seen him write. Definitely will not work for everyone, but it did work for me, so there it is. Next, I watched Mulan. Also have a review on that one, but this one was much more disappointing. It's definitely not the worst live-action Disney remake I've seen, but definitely not the best. My biggest takeaway from this is that Disney is not going to be able to keep this up. With several more live-action remakes in the works, I do not think they have what it takes to finish them all to the level that they think they can. I then watched the documentary Class Action Park, which was a documentary on the theme park Action Park. This was fine. The concept of Action Park is very interesting, but I don't feel like this documentary gave it full justice. It was essentially a lot of people sitting around talking and telling stories about their experience at the park, but I wanted to see more insight of the inner workings of the park, which this documentary didn't fully offer. Next, I finally made it back to the movies after 6 months. It was a glorious experience, and I will say I was very glad that it was Tenet that I got to see for my first movie back. Now, it's hard to talk about Tenet without comparing it to other Nolan films, and yes, of course, I also have a review of this movie. And so while it is far from his best movie, it's definitely up there as being upper middle tier. Like any of his other films, the concept is interesting enough that it's going to cause conversation afterwards and make any film nerd geek out, but the plot and the characters and pretty much everything else that makes it a movie do not hold up and compare to that concept. I've said it on this channel before and I'll say it again. He had an interesting concept, but forgot to make a movie to go along with it, which may have you questioning my score, but it's Christopher Nolan. I'm a sucker. I understand that my taste doesn't always match good movies. I then watched The Good Liar, which is a movie that came out last year that I skipped, and I'm glad I did because this was just weird. I have absolutely no idea what made them make a film like this, but it's essentially just plot twist after plot twist, most of them predictable, one you're waiting for since the beginning of the movie, and then the end of the movie hits and it finally happens, and you're like, finally, I was waiting for this to happen. It's just not good, and with 2 all-star actors, you expected it to be good. I then took about 3 days to watch Lawrence of Arabia just because that was the only way I was able to fit in this 4-hour film. I don't know what you can really say about this movie because it's been discussed for years and often considered to be one of the best, so anything I could say is not going to compare to anything that has already been said about it. But from my personal experience, I think the cinematography was the most compelling aspect of it, and you can absolutely tell the effort that was put into making this. Now, did it completely hold my undivided attention for the whole duration of 4 hours? No, absolutely not. It was definitely slow at parts, and it suffers from that, it's really good, but is it really one of the best? And unfortunately, I don't think you can have that conversation just because it's considered a classic, which is totally fine and I respect. I'll just leave it at, yes, I can see how it is one of the best movies of all time. Yes, I really enjoyed it and was impressed by what it was able to accomplish. No, it is not one of my personal favorites that I would go and rewatch. Next was The Lodge, a horror movie that came out last year, and this was terrifying. Mostly because the elements of horror that it dealt with are probably the scariest elements any horror movie to me could have. It just hit all the right beats when it came to scares, and the plot was actually really fascinating. The acting was very good, and it's not going to be the type of movie that's like on any top 10 list, but it is a very solid horror movie and much better than about 90% of what we get from the genre. The next movie I was able to see in theaters, The Broken Hearts Gallery, and again, I have a full review on this one. The biggest takeaway from my review is that I cannot believe that this wasn't a book. This just feels like it was a book that was made into a movie, and I am never going to get over the fact that it was not a book first. But ultimately, I almost already forgot about this movie, to be honest. It's cute, sure, and if you like those books that were turned into movies, you're gonna like this because, again, it has that vibe, but ultimately, this just didn't do it. Enola Holmes was next, the newest Netflix original movie that seems to be at the top of its trending page, if I actually trust that Netflix uses that algorithm correctly. Like, does anyone actually believe that it's the actual top 10? Because it seems to only be Netflix original stuff. Anyways, yeah, this movie was delightful. Much better than I thought it was going to be, because I thought it was going to be terrible. But if anything, this movie showed me that Millie Bobby Brown has a lot more in her than just being a child actress. I cannot wait to see her grow into more of these roles as she develops her craft. This movie was fun and witty, and by far not my favorite of the year, but it's not the worst Netflix original movie that you could see. Next was The Evil Dead, the Sam Raimi classic from the 80s. And this is another older movie that, like, yeah, I can see why people like it, not for me personally, but the thing I appreciated most, I think, was the camera. It made you feel like you were just immersed into this world, like you were another character witnessing these events. And don't get me wrong, the events were terrifying. This was one of the scariest experiences I've ever had watching a movie. So it is no surprise to me that this movie is loud. It is no surprise to me that this is where he got his start. Next was another classic, Blazing Saddles, one of the greatest comedies of all time. And yeah, it's a great comedy. I don't know if every single thing it holds up necessarily, because it is touching on some pretty touchy subjects, but for the most part I still think it works really well. And I think Gene Wilder is probably my favorite part, and it just reassured to me that I need to see more of his work. But Mel Brooks always delivers, so I can't really complain too much about what I saw in this movie. Finally, I once again watched Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I feel like I watch this every month, so I don't got any new information other than it's still one of the best movies ever made. Alright, that's it. That's what I watched in September. Have you seen any of these movies? Let me know your thoughts. What did you watch in September? Comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this, and I will see you next time.